The desert had taught Ethan Cole one unbreakable law. Water was life, and every river was a blessing. That belief would nearly destroy him. For 3 days, the cowboy had ridden beneath a sun that burned like judgment itself. His horse, Dustfire, breathed heavy beneath him, ribs showing through sweat-darkened hide, while the land stretched endlessly in shades of copper, bone, and dust. Ethan's canteen had run dry before dawn, his lips cracked, his throat scraping raw with every swallow of nothing. He had seen mirages before, shimmering, lakes that vanished when approached. But this time the river did not disappear. It carved its way through the land with ancient certainty, a silver serpent cutting life into the unforgiving earth. Tall cottonwoods leaned over its banks, their leaves whispering secrets, and the water flowed dark and deep, cold even from a distance. Ethan slid from his saddle and nearly collapsed to his knees. He did not notice the stone markers etched with symbols older than his nation, nor the prayer ribbons faded by decades of wind. All he saw was salvation. He stripped off his hat, plunged his hands into the river and drank greedily, the water shocking his body awake. Laughter burst from his chest, hoarse, half mad with relief. He waded in, boots first, then sank down fully, letting the river swallow his dust, his blood, his exhaustion. He washed his face, his arms, his hair, unaware that every ripple carried his fate downstream. High above the riverbank, unseen eyes watched. The Apache did not shout. They did not reveal themselves. Silence was their warning, and Ethan never heard it. When he emerged, water dripping from his beard and shirt, clinging to his chest, the air felt heavier. The birds had gone quiet. Dustfire stamped nervously behind him. Ethan reached for his rifle and froze. 10 warriors stepped from the trees as one breath, rifles raised, faces unreadable. Movements precise, as if rehearsed by the land itself. Their leader stepped forward slowly, his presence commanding the river to hush even more. His hair was silver, but his back was straight, his eyes sharp as obsidian blades. Ethan lifted his hands instinctively. "Didn't mean no harm," he rasped. "Just needed water." The old man studied him for a long moment, then spoke in English, worn smooth by time. "You did more than drink." Ethan frowned, confusion tightening his chest. "Sir?" The chief turned, gesturing toward the river. "This water is sacred. It is bound by an oath older than my father's father." His gaze returned, unblinking. "Whoever bathes in this river binds their life to my people." A murmur passed through the warriors like wind through grass. Ethan swallowed. "I didn't know." The chief nodded once. "Ignorance does not break an oath." The words struck harder than any bullet. Ethan tried to reason, tried to explain the thirst, the heat, the desperation, but the Apache warriors listened as stone listens to rain. The chief raised his hand and the others lowered their rifles. Relief flooded Ethan for half a second, until the chief spoke again. "Whoever bathes in this water," he said, voice steady and absolute, "will marry my daughter." The world tilted. Ethan laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. That's some kind of joke." The chief did not smile. "My daughter is a woman grown. She knows the law. She will choose whether to accept you, but the river has already chosen." From the shadows of the cottonwoods, she stepped forward. She moved with quiet confidence, eyes dark and assessing, her presence commanding as much respect as her father's. She was not adorned in weakness or fantasy, but in strength, braided hair, calm posture, and a gaze that did not flinch beneath Ethan's stunned stare. This was no prize, no bargaining chip. This was a woman raised in tradition, carrying the weight of her people's future. Their eyes met. Something in Ethan's chest tightened, not desire, not fear, but the terrible recognition that some moments divide a life into before and after. "You bathed," she said simply. He nodded, words failing him for the first time in his life. The chief stepped between them. "Tonight you will be our guest. Tomorrow you will hear the full law of the river." The warriors closed in, not as captors, but as guardians of a fate already set in motion. As Ethan mounted Dustfire and followed them deeper into the trees, the river flowed on behind him, silent once more, having claimed another soul who mistook salvation for freedom. The Apache camp did not announce itself with noise or firelight, the way frontier towns did. It revealed itself gradually, like a truth unwilling to be rushed. As Ethan rode behind the warriors, the trees opened into a wide clearing, where lodges stood arranged in a deliberate circle, each one placed with purpose rather than chance. Smoke rose thin and straight from cooking fires, carrying the scent of roasting meat and desert herbs. Children paused in their play to stare, elders lifted their eyes without surprise, and women continued their work with calm curiosity, as if the river had whispered of this moment long before Ethan arrived. No one shouted, no one pointed. He felt more exposed than if they had cursed him. The chief dismounted first, his authority settling over the camp like a shadow at noon, and Ethan followed stiffly, every instinct screaming that he had crossed into a world governed by rules he did not understand and could not escape. Dustfire was led away gently, treated not as a tool, but as a living companion, which unsettled Ethan even more. Nothing here fit the stories he had been told. He was given water again, but this time it was offered in a carved bowl, presented with quiet ceremony. Ethan hesitated before drinking, painfully aware now that water carried consequences. The woman from the river, Naya, he would later learn, watched him with an expression that revealed neither warmth nor hostility. Her gaze was not accusing. It was measuring, as though she were weighing the worth of a man against something far older than personal desire. When he finished, she nodded once and turned away, leaving him with a sense of unfinished conversation hanging heavy in the air. As night fell, the camp changed. Fires burned brighter. Drums began to speak in slow, steady rhythms, and the stars emerged sharp and countless above them. Ethan sat near the chief, his hands resting on his knees, posture stiff with the tension of a man waiting for a verdict. The chief finally spoke, his voice low but carrying effortlessly. He told the story of the river, not as a warning, but as a memory etched into the bones of his people. Long ago, when the land was torn by endless bloodshed, the river had been chosen as a bond between worlds. It would unite rather than divide, binding outsiders to the tribe, not through conquest, but through commitment. The law was simple and unbroken. To bathe was to belong, and belonging demanded responsibility stronger than freedom. Ethan listened, his mind racing for loopholes that did not exist. "What if a man refuses?" he asked quietly. The chief's eyes met his, steady and unforgiving. "Then the river takes what is owed in another way." Silence followed, thick and absolute. Ethan did not ask what that meant. He did not need to. He felt it in the weight of the night, in the stillness of the warriors, in the unspoken understanding that fate here was not negotiated. Later, alone near the edge of the camp, Ethan stared into the fire and tried to remember the man he had been that morning, the wandering cowboy chasing contracts and coin, owing nothing to anyone but his horse and his gun. That man felt distant now, like a shadow burned away by the river's cold truth. He thought of Naya, of her calm strength, of the absence of fear in her eyes. This was no trap set for fools. This was a door that once opened could never be closed again. When sleep finally came, it brought no rest. Dreams of flowing water and circling fires followed him, of hands pulling him beneath the surface, not to drown him, but to claim him. Somewhere between night and dawn, Ethan understood that the river had not merely spared his life, it had rewritten it. By the time the sun rose over the cottonwoods, Ethan Cole knew one thing with terrifying clarity. He had not bathed in the wrong river. He had bathed in the last river he would ever cross as a free man.